So as I mentioned, this weekend the DA's 2,000-odd delegates will take part in their virtual election congress, vying for the top spot. Interim leader John Steenhuisen and KZN MPL Mbali and Tuli. I'm joined now by Ebrahim Fakir. He's a political analyst, also director of programs at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute. Hi there, Ebrahim. Always great to chat to you. Who do you believe would be the best leader for the DA out of those two candidates?
Gosh, Sally, the reality is that I don't think that it's going to come down to the personalities and to the leader. The DA actually has serious structural and organizational problems. But let me answer the question on which you press me. I don't think that, as I'm saying, either of them would be a bad leader because they both have merits. Steenhuisen has proven himself to be an adept chief whip, an adept leader of the DA in Parliament, has been excellent at debates, has crafted the policy position of the DA in Parliament fairly well, quite coherently. But that's not where the problems of the DA lie. The problems lie inside the party organizationally, firstly, and secondly, in its ability to reach out beyond its core constituency. Now, we know that in 2019, that the DA lost a little bit of support. I'm not sure that it was as cataclysmic as they made it out to be. It was roughly about 1.8%, and they lost 5 seats. That's not a train smash, but it is troubling for a party which needs to now recalibrate and get back the support that it's lost, somewhat to its right flank to the Freedom Front. But I think people underestimate the degree to which a number of black voters, which the DA actually started making inroads into since 2011, on average 2.5% election on election. That cohort did one of two things. They stayed away because they were unhappy with the inconsistent approach of the DA. It was kind of wishy-washy. It was prevaricating on a whole range of issues, and they saw a better option in Ramaphosa. So a part of them decided to shift their vote and support Ramaphosa. Another part simply decided to stay away. And if you look at the figures of the stay away figure, it's not just ANC voters who stayed away. A large component of that was a part of the DA voters. So they now got two problems. A, reanimate the voting base which must come back to the polls, and recapture some of those voters who you lost. Now, each one of these candidates, Sally, would be able to do a part of that. But they're couching this debate amongst the two of them, still going back to the debates they had in 2015 when Wilmot James went up against Musi Maimane about the question of race. But why should race matter in this particular instance? Because the common fealty that they both have fidelity to is to a set of structural reforms in the economy, which is about austerity, reducing the size of the state, cutting back on welfare, those kinds of things. So where does race fit in?
Let me jump in here, because you mentioned when you were talking about how votes were lost last year, that they either went, a lot of black voters either went to Ramaphosa or they stayed away because of inconsistencies. Now, one could argue that one of the inconsistencies around race-based redress has now been cleared up, because in September, the party decided to go for what they're calling economic justice rather than race-based redress. I'm wondering if the whole party is on the same page in that regard, or whether you feel that that actually has cleared up a certain amount of policy uncertainty, and is that a good thing and the right direction for the party?
It hasn't, because there's still a portion of the party which is wanting to recenter the question of race. However, it doesn't wish to say in what way race must matter. So you would simply hear the trotting out of almost a mantra, race must matter. But in what way must race matter? You've got another part of the party saying, let's use disadvantage as a proxy for redistributive policy. Now, that makes sense, because the largest number of people who will be disadvantaged will automatically be black and primarily African. So it solves that part of the problem. The real sticking points are now going to come to the actual policies on which these are based. So what do you do about things like affirmative action? or affirmative procurement. You can dispense with the question of BEE because that now may be dispensed with when you talk about the question of redress on the basis of disadvantage. But it still raises questions about what do you do about labor protections? How do you stimulate economic growth, and how is that growth distributed in the economy?
So,
Where and how are the welfare beneficiaries going to be defined? Now, in part, that question is answered. But the real sticking points will be, what will real welfare policy actually be? Will we continue
that
with social
really,
grants? To what extent?
yeah, exactly. And that's going to be the real challenge, I think, for the new leader. Very quickly, do you think that it's John Steenhuisen, without a doubt?
No, I wouldn't. I would never say without a doubt. And as you know, in any election, whether it's public or otherwise that we've spoken on before, I refuse to make predictions. And I would want to do the same in this case. Structurally, it appears that he does have the advantage just of incumbency, firstly, secondly, experience, and thirdly, the sheer number of people who've declared that they would vote for him. However, I wouldn't underestimate Mbali Ntuli. But Sally, whether it's Mbali or whether it's John Steenhuisen, the real focus on the DA, as I suggested in the openings, has to be organizational. In that sense, they've got to heal the rifts which may have emerged after this, because we know one of the fallouts after the Wilmot James and Musi Maimane spat, and of course Helen Zille must take major responsibility here for the opportunism with which she played this entire game. She has to take some responsibility. But the fallout from then really gathered so much momentum that it actually led to deep fractures in the party, which had organizational, forget the ideological schisms and splits, but it has major organizational problems and inconsistencies in the way in which internal discipline was approached. Now, if this contest is going to lead to the same kind of problems, then the DA is going to face internal attrition rather than internal cohesion.
So in a way, it's an opportunity to move beyond that. Thank you so much for your views this evening. Ebrahim Fakir, political analyst and director of programs at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute.